A good afternoon and welcome to Live Impact News right here on the 13 News Now app. I am Connor Reel and I'm joined by the People's producer, Nia Campbell. Nia, how are you today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I am doing great, and we are here in the studio with a continuing piece of coverage from our live breaking news this morning out of Newport News, where the Richneck Elementary School criminal trial was happening. Now, I say the word was because that trial is now over. Early this morning, we got word from our reporters on the ground that the judge has thrown out all 8 counts charged against Dr. Ebony Parker in this case. So the trial is over. There was a motion brought by the defense to enact this outcome, and the judge ultimately decided to do so. So that means, once again, the charges brought against Dr. Ebony Parker, all 8 counts of child neglect, have been thrown out by the judge, and this trial is over. This was a motion to strike those charges, and once again, the judge has decided to do so, which means we have reached the conclusion of a trial that was entering its 4th day, but really ended up being essentially a 3-day trial after that decision this morning. And so we are going to go now out live to Newport News, where our reporting staff has been working diligently all morning long to get analysis, updates, reaction. Madison Schlegel has been in Newport News all week. Brianna Fallon has been there this morning outside the courthouse, making sure we do not miss a single lawyer or family member who is exiting that courthouse following this trial. First, we are going to go to Madison Schlegel. Madison, a monumental decision in this case. Some would say a landmark decision in this case, a case that is now over. What can you tell us about this decision today?
Yeah, leading up to this case, we said time and time again how historic it was going to be. And we kind of saw just how historic it was with the judge's words this morning. She said there's no precedent for this case. And we knew that going into this week. And we knew that over the last couple of days, there were concerns and questions about what was kind of playing out in the courtroom. But I want to make a distinction here that legal analyst Ed Booth kind of helped us uncover here. There's a difference between a motion for a mistrial and also the defense moving to strike the case. So you remember yesterday we did hear a motion for a mistrial. The judge ultimately ruled against that mistrial, saying that the jury still had more evidence in order to uncover, and that evidence was presented yesterday in court. And then today the defense moved to strike the case as a whole. So that means that those charges, those 8 counts against Ebony Parker, again, were thrown out by the judge, meaning that this case won't really be started up again. Legal analyst Ed Booth did tell us that in a case like this, typically, if there's a mistrial, that means, hey, we need to stop this case and we need to start over from the beginning. But when the judge strikes down instances like what she did today, it basically means that this case is stopping dead in its tracks. It means that the prosecution or the Commonwealth here won't really, the likelihood of the Commonwealth bringing forward new charges connected to this case, Ed Booth says, are very, very slim. I know you've been asking about what comes next here. We were asking him about if those charges connected to this case would still come out. He said that's very unlikely to happen and would kind of be an esoteric way of thinking about law here. He had also mentioned just some instances about how the civil cases we've talked about here will also impact this criminal trial. You know that we had the civil trial that was last year that centered around Abby Zwerner. That was in October and November of last year, where she was awarded $10 million and she was seeking $40 million. Now, Abby Zwerner's attorneys have also mentioned that type of moment in this case as well, saying that it can now move forward and Abby can now hopefully move to try to secure that $10 million she was granted to receive by the courts. But as it comes to the other civil cases that we've learned about here, that's a case that's being presented by the parents of students who were inside that classroom on January 6th. We don't really have much word about the movement in that case. But Ed Booth did tell us that this conclusion here in this case might give a little bit of breath for that case to start moving forward. So again, Connor, as you've mentioned at the top of this stream, this case is over. Maybe it wasn't the outcome that maybe some would have expected, especially on today when we knew that there were still a couple more witnesses to be seen, especially because the defense had also alluded to today that they could possibly be recalling witnesses that the prosecution did bring to the table earlier this week, like Abby Zwerner and like Amy Kovac, the reading specialist that was there at the school, along with a possible counselor who was at the school as well. So again, none of those witnesses took the stand once again today. They only testified that singular time earlier this week. On top of that, we did learn that at about 10 this morning, that's when the jurors showed up for this case. When the jury showed up, the judge did briefly put the court into recess until the jurors showed up. The jurors showed up, they decided to let Ebony Parker go, and then they formally told the jury the decision that was reached, and those jurors were dismissed. So at that point, we saw the jurors leaving the building as well as the attorneys for both parties. We've got Brianna Fallon out here who's got more details about their reaction, their words just moments after stepping out of the courthouse here. But given the nuts and bolts that we've heard play out over the last couple hours this morning, again, we've learned that the judge has decided to strike this case down because she doesn't believe that there was a direct link to that disregard of life little tidbit that was inside of the indictments that were passed down to Ebony Parker. So again, Brianna has those reactions, and I've got all the nuts and bolts if you've got any other questions about what happened inside of the courtroom this week, Connor.
But Madison, throughout this week, you and I have been exchanging sort of a Q&A at the top of these shows, but that was so thorough, that was so, full of information there that I think we're going to let you go here. That was fantastic. We appreciate all of your hard work, and we also know that Madison Schlegel is getting into a car to come back here to 13 News Now, and she's going to be with us in studio with all the information you need coming up at 4, 5, and 6. So Madison, for now, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll transition over to Brianna Fallon if you don't have anything else to add.
Yeah, thanks, Connor. We appreciate it.
All right, we will see Madison again very soon, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in studio, and just a wealth of information from her as she's been giving us all week long here on Live Impact News. So she will be here along with Ed Booth for more of a breakdown of this trial, but those are the nuts and bolts. Now transitioning to, as Madison said, more of a sort of the emotional side of this, right? We can get so wrapped up in the big picture of the legal technicalities and the wide range of issues at play here that we can sometimes maybe lose sight of the immense human factor at play in a trial like this. Brianna Fallon was in the courtroom today and got to witness just how emotional this is for the parties involved. Brianna, I'll let you take this wherever you want. What can you tell us about what you saw today?
Very emotional day here in Newport News today. The moment that judge decided to dismiss all 8 charges, Ebony Parker just started sobbing. You could just hear her sobs erupt in the courtroom, and that is the moment you knew she was feeling pure relief, which she did let me know briefly outside the courtroom this morning when she reconnected with her family. She said that she doesn't really have any further comment at this time, but she is feeling that pure relief as she was still pulling herself together with some tears in her eyes. She says at this point she is ready to move on and continue to get on with her life. We then came outside of the Newport News courthouse today where we got reaction from defense and prosecution in this case. Now, prosecutors did not have much to add. He said that right now, as Madison was saying, that this is the end of the case for the criminal side of things right now, as those charges were all dismissed. But defense, on the other hand, they were talking about how relieved not only they are, but just the relief that they could feel from Parker today in court. They talked about how this case could be monumental, that it doesn't typically happen where 8 counts of felony charges just do get completely struck down by a judge. He mentioned that he's seen it in misdemeanor trials before, but he personally has not been involved in a case this large where felony charges were struck down to that degree. Now, I did reach out to Hampton's Commonwealth's attorney Anton Bell for a statement or further comment on this case. He did get back to me. He said that he will be sending a statement soon. So right now we're just keeping our eyes out for that statement and waiting for more reaction as it continues to pour in, Connor.
Okay, Brianna, clearly an emotional day in Newport News for so many. We played video as you described it of Ebony Parker reacting to that reading from the judge, and you can see just what an outpouring of emotions and almost a release in a way that it was for her after not just a long week, but 3 long years of this. You said something to me that was interesting this morning about Ebony's reaction. Her interaction with family. Is there more you can tell us about that?
Yeah, I mean, it was very emotional. I stepped outside of the courtroom as she reconnected with her family after hearing the outcome of this trial today, and they didn't speak at first. They just ran up to each other. They hugged, embraced each other for a while before kind of talking things through. I know she did mention that her sister was not present today, but she wished her sister was, just to see the outcome of this trial today. So again, it was very, very emotional, and I did speak with them upstairs briefly after that embrace, after they kind of connected again and just talked about the relief in this case. And again, she is ready to move on, put all of this behind her to see what's next.
Okay, Brianna Fallon in Newport News. She as well will be getting into a car and heading back to Norfolk to join us in the studio for our shows later on, 4, 5, and 6. Brianna, anything else to add before we let you go?
No, I mean, I think that's about it. It was just very, very emotional out here. We watched everybody leave the courtroom earlier today, and we'll have more on that later, as well as hopefully that statement from the Hampton Commonwealth's attorney.
Okay, Brianna Fallon in Newport News, waiting on that statement, but bringing us plenty of reaction in the meantime. We appreciate it, Brianna. We'll see you back here soon. All right, as for us here in the Live Impact News studio, you heard Madison Schlegel mention Abby Zwerner and the statement from Abby Zwerner's attorneys. We have that statement in full now. I'm going to read that to you here. Quote, "One of the many obstacles the city of Newport News placed in Abby Zwerner's path to justice was their argument that they could deny insurance coverage in our civil case because of possible criminal conduct. Today, that is no longer an excuse that the city can hide behind. This was always the Commonwealth's criminal case, not Abby's civil case." Abby complied with the subpoena requiring her testimony once again, despite the emotional toll of repeatedly reliving this tragedy. From the beginning, our focus has remained on obtaining justice in civil court for the preventable failures that led to Abby being shot. A Newport News jury has already spoken, returning a $10 million verdict in Abby's favor. Yet, even today, the city of Newport News continues to resist accepting responsibility and delivering the justice that verdict represents. That is attorneys Diane Toscano and her team speaking on a statement on behalf of Abby Zwerner here that was sent to 13 News Now. Another thing that Madison drew attention to, let's hone in on that first statement, right? The argument that Newport News could deny insurance coverage in our civil case because of a possible criminal conduct. This is something that Ed Booth can describe much more eloquently, but I will try to sort of give some insight into what that opening sort of stanza of that statement is about. In that, when you have a government defendant, such as a part of the public school system, there are insurance companies involved with paying whatever civil award is granted in a lawsuit. Now, if the defendant is charged with a crime or convicted with a crime, those insurance companies can say that they won't provide that financial defense for you if you're found responsible, right? So it could impact the ability for Abby Zwerner to receive the full payment of $10 million that she was awarded if there was a criminal conviction, and insurance companies could then use that as a means to not pay that award. So the fact that there has been a throwing out of this case and no criminal conviction means that, as was said in this statement, one of the obstacles towards justice in the form of that payment has been removed. So a very interesting dichotomy there when it comes to the dance between this criminal trial and the civil case that we saw in the fall of last year. But then, of course, there is means to focus on that last final sentence. The city of Newport News continues to resist accepting responsibility, included from Abby Zwerner's attorneys there. Now, we did have attorneys from the defense who were exiting the courthouse and did speak briefly to Brianna Fallon. This is Stephen Teague, who was one of the attorneys that was assisting Curtis Rogers in this defense. And as he exited the courtroom, he stopped by and sort of graciously spoke to reporters before making his way home. Let's take a listen into that right now.
What happened today with the case?
We believe that the correct outcome was reached, and we're thrilled for Dr. Parker. Thank you.
What was that moment like when the judge said this didn't constitute a crime, and then Dr. Parker started sobbing?
Right, yeah, it was just a relief for her, a great relief for her, and we're just happy that we were part of her journey.
What's next for her?
I'm not sure, but thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah, and what was your just initial reaction, once you realized what direction the judge was going in?
Relief, happiness.
How often do you see a motion to strike succeed?
Well, I've never been in a part of a case as big as this one, but very often in misdemeanor cases, motions to strike succeed. In misdemeanor cases.
This wasn't a misdemeanor case.
Right. So,
okay.
but in felony cases, I think it's way less
right.
often. Yeah, way less common.
Have you ever seen it before in one of your cases?
No, not on a felony. No. Yeah.
And this was 8 counts, right? I mean, that's pretty significant. Can you talk a little bit about that and kind of coming to that conclusion to put that defense together to get the judge to strike this?
Well, Curtis Rogers was the lead attorney on this matter. I came in to assist him. I'm happy that I was able to help him, but this is his case, and he prepared diligently, and I'm proud of him, and I'm happy for Dr. Parker.
Judge Robinson said she had no precedent to work with. Is this a landmark case and a landmark ruling?
I believe it will be, yes. Yeah. Thank you all.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Is this a landmark case and a landmark ruling? The answer from Stephen Teague, one of the defense attorneys, I believe it will be. So that tells you all you need to know about the significance, not just of this event and this case, but of this decision that we have witnessed this morning. We've got more coverage coming of this particular breaking news right after a brief commercial break. All right, we're back here on Live Impact News. Now, thus far in our show, we've done a lot of talking about this monumental decision from the judge in the Richneck Elementary School criminal trial, a decision acting on a motion to strike. A motion to strike, as Madison Schlegel said, different from the motion for a mistrial that we saw earlier in the week. This is a motion to strike to essentially strike the charges that have been brought against Dr. Ebony Parker, to throw out the charges that were brought against Dr. Ebony Parker, and that is exactly what the judge decided to do. And we've talked about it quite a bit. How about listening to the act itself? Let's go to our recording of the moment in the courtroom where the judge announces her decision, and then we also get to see Ebony Parker's reaction. We saw a little bit of it earlier during Brianna's live hit, but now we're going to take you in with audio to the moment that this seismic decision was made.
But we are where we are. Having considered this case for 4 days and listened to the motions of counsel and the division of labor in a criminal jury trial. So in that division of labor, in those legal proceedings, questions of facts go to the jury, questions of law go to the judge. A question of fact asks what happened, and it requires evaluating evidence such as the witness testimony and or physical proof. Questions of law ask how does the law apply to those facts, and requires interpretation of statutes, precedents, and constitutional rules. And that's kind of legalese, but breaking it down. The judge decides the question of law, which is what law applies, procedure, and runs the courtroom. In this case, a criminal jury, the jury would decide the facts, which is what happened. To give an analogy, because this case doesn't put itself well to an analogy, somebody is given a ticket for speeding 70 and a 65, but they're stopped in a parking lot. The jury decides the question of fact. Was that driver actually going 70? The judge would decide, does the speeding law apply in the parking lot? So that's the way to wrap your mind around the difference between question of law and fact, which can get quite convoluted. With the question of facts being resolved by the trier of fact, which in this case is the jury, and their job would be to weigh the strength of the evidence and the credibility of the witness, and judges resolve the questions of law. And what would be put to the jury in this case was whether or not Ebony Parker is guilty, and that would be the question of fact. I do all this, say all this, because the distinction between law and fact can become convoluted, and they can be mixed. It can be a mixed question of law and fact. The Supreme Court itself has acknowledged that it can be an imperfect science of where is that dividing line, but identifying that line is important, critically important, whether or not it's a question of law or fact. Question of fact goes to the jury, they make the decisions. Question of law, it stays with the judge. And I guess for purposes of the parties' understanding, that influences the courtroom decision maker, the appellate review, how evidentiary rules are administered, and the application of precedent, which I will say there is no precedent for what's before the court of an administrator being criminally charged and tried for what has been presented and what happened that day, January 6, 2023, at Richneck Elementary School in Newport News. This court is finding that it is presented with a question of law, which requires resolution by the decision maker. The decision maker on questions of law are the judge, and whose decision is that, and my decision is that this is a matter for the court, and the court is of the legal opinion that this is not a crime, not under the common law of Virginia, nor under the code of Virginia. And the court is going to explain its rationale and ruling. With that being said, if it's not a crime under the common law, nor under the code of Virginia, should the legislature wish to make this a crime, then they will create specific statutory language to do so. When reviewing the statutory language, The court is bound by the plain meaning of that language and must give effect to the legislature's intention as expressed by the language used, and unless a literal interpretation of the language will result in manifest absurdity. So now I look at the statute. Virginia Code 18.2, 371.1. What the indictment charges here is under paragraph B of that statute. It reads, any parent, guardian, or other person responsible for the care of a child under the age of 18 whose willful act or omission in the care of such child was so gross, wanton, and culpable as to show reckless disregard for human life is guilty of a Class 6 felony. The indictments in this case don't address specific individuals, but they list students. The court finds that what has been presented to it is a mashup of legal theory. And it is not clear, based upon the plain meaning of the statute, that these facts are crimes. In the court's analysis, the court is asking, is the crime that Ebony Parker didn't follow Newport News policy and procedure, of which was put into evidence, which would have required two people to search the person of JT, either two administrators or one administrator and one security officer, of which the security officer was on site at a different school performing their duties, and the principal, the other administrator present, that's known in this proceeding, was in scheduled meetings during testing. Is the crime that Dr. Parker didn't direct a search of the child's person after being informed that the book bag was clear? Are the 8 counts of the indictment based upon the number of children in the room when the firearm went off? Are the 8 counts of the indictment based upon unfired bullets remaining in the firearm, which would be contrary to established case law as they have to be discharged? Is the delayed reunification the reckless disregard for human life? Is it the emotional trauma of the exposed child who was in the classroom? I believe the initials were KS. Is that the reckless disregard for human life? Is it the fearfulness, bedwetting, and hypervigilance of all the children in the school that day that comprises the reckless disregard for human life? Is it because JT wasn't expelled prior to January 6, 2023 due to his previous behaviors, which presumably would be in the province of the prior principals, Dr. Goodman and then Ms. Foster? Or is the crime the lack of heightened response from Ebony Parker due to her awareness of prior issues with JT? The court is unclear. And as previously stated, those legal theories do not fit the plain meaning of the statute. If they are to amount to a crime, then the legislature will need to codify it. Therefore, I do grant defense motion to strike in whole on all 8 counts of felony child abuse and endangerment under indictment CR, indictment number 24999-541-01 through 08. So those matters are dismissed. I want to add, my ruling today is based upon legal principles only. It is inappropriate for me to give my personal thoughts or express sympathy or concern.
All right, we're back here in the studio, and you heard, I mean, that was audible when that was kind of officially all came to a head. You saw Dr. Ebony Parker, again, go down consoled by her legal team, an outpouring of emotion, and it was even audible. You could hear sort of the reaction there as well. So getting a look inside the courtroom is part of our continuing coverage. And, you know, I'll give sort of a mashup of some of the various things that we heard throughout the morning from Ed Booth, from Madison Schlegel, from lawyers outside the courthouse, from Brianna Fallon. Let's just do some quick sort of bullet points of some different things that we heard. I mean, something we've already been over, the fact that there was no precedent for this case and how the judge really gave that a lot of emphasis in announcing her decision. How this is, Stephen Teague asked, will this be a landmark case, a landmark ruling? And him responding, I believe so. I believe it will. He also said that typically he would see a motion like this in misdemeanor cases, a motion to strike, as opposed to a felony case. He himself, Stephen Teague, one of the assisting attorneys for the defense, said he had never seen this in a felony case before. There was statements about how the jury is a trier of fact and how there were simply too many questions surrounding the indictment, that it was unclear about what exactly the disregard for life was. That's a key part of this ruling. It was unclear what exactly the disregard for life was. Those 8 counts, it was alluded to that it was due to 8 bullets in the gun, but there was also a great deal of witness testimony about the emotional trauma inflicted on children who were in that classroom that day or at the school that day. You heard the judge announce there that this was specifically about logistics when it comes to the law, and that it was inappropriate for her to give any personal opinion. It was about the logistics of the law. We do know that there was all that trouble earlier in the week, all that consternation earlier in the week about objections due to hearsay. What was struck from the record? What wasn't struck for the record? In the pursuit of those answers, did the jury interact inappropriately? All of that factored in to the motion for mistrial. That motion was denied. Rather, it's the motion to strike that comes to fruition later on. We also heard from Ed Booth as he talked about how it's ideal in a trial like this for the smooth progression of facts. Maybe that's not something that we necessarily saw here. The motion to strike typically represents a dismissal of a case because the prosecution hasn't met whatever the elements of a particular crime are. He gave an example. If someone was charged with arson and there was failure to prove that the fire was started by arsonist means, that would be an example of something that may bring about a motion to strike. Ed Booth was giving us a little bit more context into the judicial proceedings and why certain things are enacted. Of course, we have the knowledge that there was a civil trial brought by Abby Zwerner against Newport News Public Schools. It was for $40 million. She was seeking $40 million. She was awarded $10 million. There is a civil suit to come from parents of children in that classroom and at that school that is yet to begin. It was something that they were questioned about at times during witness testimony in terms of what they maybe stood to gain from some of what was proceeding in this criminal case. But of course, there's not necessarily an impact between criminal and civil cases, even though there's been a number of each in this event. And we have, of course, the final update from court today that this case is stopping in its tracks, that this case is over, that we thought here on our 1:00 p.m. live Impact News stream, we were under the impression that it'd be likely that we would be maybe covering closing arguments or reacting to a late verdict to come. We expected to be inside the courtroom with our 30-minute delayed live look. All of that was kind of what we were planning for today. And then early this morning, right around, I want to say 9:30, right around 9:15, 9:30, we got word that a motion to strike was being considered. And then quickly thereafter, word that the judge had in fact decided to throw out all 8 counts of child neglect that were brought against Dr. Ebony Parker. We then saw Dr. Parker become emotional, embraced by her family, speaking to our Brianna Fallon in the courthouse, but then leaving the court quickly before speaking to reporters. We heard very briefly from one defense attorney. We did not get official statements from the prosecuting attorney or even really from the lead defense attorney. A very brief question and answer that was difficult to even discern because of how quick it was from the lead defense attorney. But this is a story that began on January 6th, 2023. It has stretched well beyond 3 years. It has seen multiple judicial processes. It has seen both an examination of individual human beings and the impact that this has had on them, as well as some of the biggest picture, most heavily discussed issues that we have here in the United States today. And today, we closed yet another chapter in this case. We know that there are more to come. We know that there is a civil case to come. But for today, this particular case, this particular trial is over. And we do not expect there to be more in terms of the criminal trial that we saw today. Today was the end of it as far as we can tell right now. Now, again, if we get any more updates, we know Brianna Fallon's waiting on that statement from Hampton. We know that there are constant reactions coming in. If we get any more updates, if we get any more reactions, we will bring them to you here on Live Impact News. And beyond that, we absolutely will have coverage, full coverage to come at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and 6 o'clock on 13 News Now, and of course at 11 o'clock as well. We'll have Madison Schlegel here in studio. We haven't seen her all week. She has been in Newport News. We will have Brianna Fallon here in studio. We'll have Ed Booth, our legal analyst, here in studio. So we have plenty more coverage to come. For us here on Live Impact News, we are going to move forward because it tends to happen this way, doesn't it? Sometimes we have slow days where there's not much going on. On this day, as we got some of our, truly sort of nationally relevant local news, we also had a litany of live events going on that we did not have the afforded time to tend to. So we will take some of that after this break. But for now, we're going to go to commercial as we wrap the beginning portions of our coverage this afternoon of the Richneck Elementary School criminal trial, the end of that trial, all 8 counts against Dr. Ebony Parker thrown out by the judge, and now we move forward and continue to cover that story any way that we can. And a commercial break for us here on Live Impact News. We will be right back. Okay, we're back here on Live Impact News here in our 13 News Now studios, and we're actually going to head out to a live event in Michigan. Mike Dugan, the former mayor of Detroit and at one point a Democrat, now an independent, running for governor in the 2026 election until we believe maybe today. We have gotten some word that this announcement is about him abandoning that campaign for governor. Let's listen in live right now in Michigan.
To thank them for what they've done. I am hopeful that this campaign will have an impact. Even at 23%, that means 1.6 million Michigan voters are so angry at the two parties, they want to see change. They want to see problems solved instead of the toxic fighting. And I am very hopeful that you will see Republican and Democratic candidates this fall embrace that. And I've talked to a number of them already today, and I've said the same thing. I'm not going to do anything before the primary, but if there are candidates in this state that take up the message of fixing the schools, fixing affordable housing, getting the jobs of the future by working together, I'm going to be open to endorsing them in the fall campaign. And so I'm going to be watching, along with a whole lot of my supporters, in the hopes that it proves that this campaign made a lasting difference. But that's where we are now, and I broke the news to the staff this morning, and I can't say these folks have been day and night. And for them, it wasn't a job. They really believed that we could change politics in Michigan. And we're going to keep at it in different ways. And with that, I'll take any questions. Go ahead. Okay. Yeah. I have had zero conversation with anybody about any job, so I can't control what's out there, but it's only been the last 48 hours that we realized we were going to do this, and I have not talked to anybody about any job. Yeah. At this point, the question is going to be in the fall, not the primary, because right in the primary, the Democrats and Republicans are trying to win their nominations. Question is going to be in the fall. Do we see candidates focus less on attacking each other and more about working together? And I'll make my judgment based on how the campaigns go in the fall. Whether they want my endorsement is the first question, or the second question is, but I do think you're going to see particularly state reps, state senate, maybe some congressional candidates start to move in the direction that I think a whole lot of Michigan residents want. Stop trashing the other party and let's start solving our problems. Yeah.
What would you say to people who were planning to vote for you now they feel lost?
I'm sorry I couldn't do better for you. I mean, that's the thing is my son Ed, as you may know, is my campaign manager. I sat down on Saturday and we just said, okay, let's figure out the plan. And you're here? So I said, Ed, no nonsense, just tell me honestly what you think. And he said, I haven't been wanting to say it out loud, but he says, right now, I don't see a path. He said, what do you think? And I said, I haven't wanted to say it out loud either, but I'm reaching the same conclusion. And once we realized that we saw things the same way, we said, but you're going to have a chance to watch candidates. It's going to be absolutely fascinating to see if the Republicans and Democrats look up and say, 23% of the people were rejecting both parties. There's a huge constituency there. And are the voices going to emerge that are going to embrace that constituency? If they do, I'll support them. And if they don't, I'll sit it out. But I'm optimistic you're going to see people move based on the conversations I've had today. Go ahead, let's try to take everybody data. What I've learned is this. There's an enormous support for it. There's not a national fundraising infrastructure for it. Somebody is going to break through, but I'll make a prediction. It's somebody who's got the wealth to be self-funded. I think the first person who breaks through is going to be the person who can self-fund, because it's the right message. It's what Americans want. But the Republicans and Democrats have done a phenomenal job over the years of building really great national fundraising networks. So somebody will follow me.
Are you saying that there's a public clamor for somebody who's rich enough to support their own campaign right now in this climate?
I'm saying there is a national clamor for somebody who will stand up and say, I'm tired of the two parties fighting with each other. We can solve problems together and has the resources to do it. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's 48 hours. Sonia is planning a trip, so we've been discussing it. And two of my kids have called to plan trips. It has been, since the day I declared for mayor, I have basically been around the clock the last 12, 13 years. And so right now I'm going to spend some time making up for lost time with the family. ML?
Your Honor, politicians talk all the time about what their windmill
In February, when I was at 30, I absolutely believed that 40% was achievable. I was at 30%, and 65% of Republicans and Democrats were saying they were open. And if you've seen those town halls, people are so frustrated with their children not reading in school. They are enormously frustrated. Young people can't afford housing in every corner of this state. When I go up to Marquette and they can't fill entry-level hospital positions because the workers can't afford the housing, there are people hurting who want Lansing to solve their problems everywhere. And so I had a goal from the beginning, was to get 20% from the right, 20% from the left, and win by 40. And in February, we were way ahead of that schedule, but there are some things you can't control. Yeah.
This week in Detroit, we learned that removing and replacing the dirt at a single home demolition site, neighborhood demolition site, costs $52,000 at one single house. That was 3 times what you said it would in December, and obviously the suspected sites of contamination have grown since that news conference you had on your way out the door. Some people have said you've left the city with quite a large bill, including potentially a public health crisis. Did that play any role in your decision to exit the race?
So I have done 30 town halls in the last 30 days, at least 2,000 people, and answered every question. Dirt did not come up in a single one of them. It is not on the voters' minds. And I am confident Mayor Sheffield will handle it appropriately, and I'm confident the money was left behind to take care of it. Yes?
Why today? Because earlier this morning you actually announced that you had received the backing of, I believe, was a police union, and then all of a sudden this...
Yeah. So there was going to be one. I have 4 more unions we haven't announced yet. No matter what day we did this, that was a problem. And so I got a lot of announcements that we just aren't going to make. But it didn't matter what day. Whatever day it was one day after a fundraiser, one day before an announcement. Once we came to the conclusion there wasn't a path, I just couldn't see going to donors and supporters anymore and saying that I believe I can win, I need your help. Yeah.
Could you see yourself in the future, obviously with this being a very nebulous time, like you said, not looking beyond right now too far. Do you see yourself pursuing, trying to build that national network of...
I'm not thinking along those lines at all. Right. I'm just right now. I haven't thought. I've literally given no thought to anything beyond getting through today and calling and thanking everybody.
But could you imagine
Again, I just don't. I want to just tell you the human side of this. Literally 18 months, every waking moment, I've been campaigning. I told the staff at 9:30 this morning, so if there was a union announcement, it was because they didn't know yet that we were pulling out. We're dealing right now with just getting through today. I've given no thought to what I'm doing after that. I just really, up till the last 48 hours, I was just consumed by the campaign. Yeah.
I'd like to just have you revisit the thought process. What you're saying, if I heard you right, voters' anger coalescing around Democrats' anger about the war, pricing, gas prices, in addition to maybe a funding component. Given the way the public can shift, paradigm changes in Iran, et cetera, there's still time.
Yeah.
I'm interested in you going a little deeper in regard to the calculus of here in May, it's done and we have no path, versus things can shift. Revisit, please, the impact economically and why you think that's the kill shot of what you're going.
Again, when you see huge national trends, and it is surging for Democrats nationally. If you aren't aware of that, you're missing what's going on in this country right now. Trump's at an all-time low in favorability. Democratic energy is at an all-time high. So I ask the question, do you think it is going to get less partisan as we go to November? And in our judgment, it's going to get more partisan. But when you're at 11 points and dropping, and you know you're at a financial disadvantage because you can't raise national money, you make a reasonable decision. And if I were sitting with you tomorrow and you were saying, hey, I'm thinking about donating to your campaign, I have to, in my own mind, believe I have a real path forward. 2013, I sat with people when I'd been thrown off the ballot and running for mayor. I saw the path forward. You could feel the momentum of change, and I had no hesitation, saying, I think I can win this right and I think I can get elected mayor. With what's happening today, with the huge national headwinds, I just couldn't honestly say that to people.
Welcome back to Live Impact News as we return from Mike Dugan speaking about how he'll be dropping his bid for governor of Michigan. The former mayor of Detroit, again, dropping his bid for governor of Michigan, surrounded by supporters there, and was once a Democrat and now ran as an independent, I should say. So a check-in on that as we continue to see changes ahead of those midterm elections that are coming in November. Now, we did finally receive that statement that Brianna Fallon had mentioned she was awaiting from the Hampton Commonwealth's attorney responding to the court decision in the Ebony Parker case. Let's go ahead and read this in full here, shall we? From the outset, this case carried significant importance to the community. It was the citizens of Newport News, through the grand jury process, who determined that indictments against Ebony Parker were appropriate based upon the evidence presented. We had hoped the community would have had the opportunity to weigh in through the full judicial process. Nevertheless, the court has now concluded the matter as it deemed appropriate under the law. Our office remains committed to pursuing justice with integrity, transparency, and fairness while continuing to honor the role that citizens play in our criminal justice system. Yours in service, Anton Bell, Hampton Commonwealth's attorney. So in this situation, speaking about how, in a way, the community never had an opportunity to give a final say, to weigh in and have their influence felt in this particular case, because the judge did ultimately take it out of the jury's hands when she decided to go forward with that motion to strike. So that was sort of mentioned there. We had hoped the community would have had the opportunity to weigh in through the full judicial process. We did not necessarily get a full judicial process because ultimately the trial ended before the jury did any deliberations and before the entirety of the evidence was presented after that motion to strike was granted, all 8 counts thrown out that were originally brought against Dr. Ebony Parker. So one more update from that case today. Let's go ahead and take a break here, and when we get back, we have some events that we have been monitoring throughout the morning that we're going to bring to you here on Live Impact News. Stay with us. Okay, Live Impact News resumes here about 1:54 p.m. here on May 21st. It's a Thursday afternoon. We're going to take a live aerial view right now of San Diego, California, where we have a prayer vigil for victims of that mosque shooting that happened earlier on in the week that is occurring right now. You see large crowds of people there gathering together in remembrance of those who were killed in that shooting, multiple of whom exhibited heroic actions in order to stop that shooting from getting into that mosque and potentially harming the children that were in the mosque at the time. Now, while we take this live look in San Diego at those who are remembering the heroes from that day and the victims from that day, we also are going to give an update that we received here from the Associated Press a couple days ago. We haven't had much on this story here, so let's dive a little bit into those who perpetrated this attack. 2 teenagers. They shot and killed 3 people in this attack on that California mosque in San Diego. And according to the Associated Press, authorities and the writings that were authored by the teenagers themselves, those 2 teenagers were radicalized online, where they first met and shared white supremacist views. Now, the pair didn't discriminate on who they hated, according to Mark Remley, the lead FBI agent in San Diego. Now, the writings were obtained by the Associated Press, and they include hateful rhetoric toward Jewish people, Muslims and Islam, as well as the LGBTQ+ community, black people, women, and both the political left and right. Both of the teenagers expressed beliefs that white people are being eliminated, and one writes about mental health struggles and being rejected by women. Investigators also found at least 30 guns, ammunition, and a crossbow at 2 different residences after Monday's attack in San Diego, where they were trying to uncover whether the shooters had broader plans. Now, the shooters, Kane Clark and Caleb Velasquez, 17 and 18 years old respectively, killed themselves after the attack, according to police. Families of the 2 teens have not been reached for comment as of early this week, and there has been a great deal of praise for the 3 men that they killed, including Amin Abdullah, a beloved security guard who slowed the attackers at the Islamic Center of San Diego and prevented them from reaching 140 school children. So again, heroic actions from Amin Abdullah, the security guard at that mosque, who slowed those attackers, and things could have been far more fatal, far more devastating if he had not been heroic and his actions dedicated to his service and showed an immense amount of courage and sacrifice in that moment. And we have at times heard from people in those communities about how dedicated Amin Abdullah was to his job, as well as the other 2. Imam Taha Hassan said that Abdullah engaged the suspects in a gun battle and called for a lockdown on his radio, saying, quote, he sacrificed his life to stop them from getting inside the classrooms. So in the face of hate and in the face of violence, we get an act of courage, an act of love, and an act of sacrifice. And that is what these crowds are honoring here in San Diego today as we take another look at that aerial view of those gathering crowds. You can see sort of over to the right, there are more people filing in as that event continues in San Diego, California. A devastating week for that community, but as you can see just from this image here, a community that is coming together in honor and remembrance of those who were lost. Now, another live look here for us briefly on another one of our live feeds. The Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy will testify on that fiscal year 2027 budget request in the House Appropriations hearing. Now, that is something that we have seen sort of repeatedly over the course of the last 4 weeks, as we have seen a number of testimonies in regards to that 2027 budget. A lot of our focus has been on armed forces testimonies, right? As the Pentagon has requested about 44% of an increase in their defense spending budget. But every department is, or many departments are testifying as as a part of the budget process in regards to whatever their particular department has requested, including Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy. Now, the transportation industry has been very much in the news in more ways than one. During those government shutdowns, airports were grabbing the headlines as TSA agents were missing more and more time while not getting paid, causing massive delays in flight schedules. Now, fast forward to today, and we see high gas prices have created disturbances all the way up and down the travel industry, from airlines all the way to personal vehicles, as the prices at the pump have continued to rise through the duration of the war in Iran. And it's a situation where, again, the transportation industry is very much in the news, and Secretary Duffy will be testifying here today about that 2027 budget. As you can see, it obviously has not yet begun, but if it does begin while we're live here on Impact News, then perhaps we'll have an opportunity to take a listen in, and we'll see if any of those sort of headline-grabbing aspects of the transportation department are included in the House Appropriations questions and answers with the secretary there. So keeping an eye on that. Now, we went for quite some time to start the show, so we're going to take another break. I know we just got back. We're going to take another break here. When we return from that break, we're going to examine some federal press conferences from this morning about Atlantic hurricane season, which is, of course, approaching, but will be impacted by an El Nino this year. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Okay, welcome back to Live Impact News. We're going to move forward with some of our coverage of a few different stories today. Earlier, we heard a press conference from NOAA, that's the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, where they were specifically discussing that Atlantic hurricane season. So a press conference from a federal governing body that relates directly to us here in Hampton Roads. So we're going to play a portion of that press conference, and we're going to have Evan Stewart come in and maybe react a little bit to what we heard, and also give us a brief forecast on what's to come for the weekend, what's to come for the rest of today. So let's listen in on that NOAA press conference right now.
Hurricanes today, but they're working all year long. Winter storms, tornadoes, floods, wildfire events. All the models that we run at INCEP, the National Center for Environmental Prediction. This includes the National Hurricane Center. I'd love to thank the National Hurricane Center for their excellent work, particularly last year where they set a new record in forecast accuracy for intensification. Hurricane Melissa was accurately predicted to rapidly intensify before the storm even developed. We also have NOAA research. This is where the numerical weather prediction is developed. These are the folks that develop the models. We have the Hurricane Analysis and Forecast System, or HAFS, which is going to be our flagship model this year for cyclone intensity. They also work on cutting-edge development of instruments. This includes the drones and the gliders. We're now getting into the world of running artificial intelligence-based forecast models. This work's being developed there too, as well as the work at Hurricane Research Division, which advances our understanding of rapid intensification of these storms. We have the National Ocean Service, which develops the coastal and ocean models, obviously essential to understanding sea surface temperature and air-sea interaction. They also manage the ocean observing systems, ensure the waterways and the ports are open after a storm. We have NESDIS, the branch that handles NOAA satellites. We have geostationary satellites, which are the GOES, which you're probably familiar with the visible satellite imagery of these hurricanes, and also the infrared. But we also have low Earth orbiting satellites with JPSS. This is where the microwave sounders come in. This is the data that drives a lot of the numerical weather prediction models. We also have the Marine Aviation and Operations, as well as the NOAA Corps, the folks which you see here today. They're in charge of the ships, the planes, all the data collection, not just for hurricanes, but also fisheries management, among other things. Behind me, we have the two P3s, Kermit and Miss Piggy, celebrating their 50th anniversary of flying into storms. These are 8 to 10 hour flights. They have the tail Doppler radar, which you just heard about. They deploy dropsondes. We also have a high altitude jet, and we'll bring in another 2 online here soon. These are the planes that fly over the storms and deploy instruments through the storms. All this data goes into the computer models to better generate our forecasts. I'm incredibly proud of the amazing work that these public servants do for our country. Okay, on to the numbers. For the Atlantic hurricane season, NOAA is predicting a below normal season for 2026, with roughly a 55% chance of being below normal, a 35% chance of near normal, and a 10% chance of above normal. This equates to 8 to 14 named storms with winds at or above 39 miles an hour. Of these, 3 to 6 hurricanes with winds at or above 74 miles an hour, and 1 to 3 major hurricanes, that's your category 3 to 5, with winds at or above 111 miles an hour. In the Central and Eastern Pacific, we're expecting a 70% chance of above normal activity. The Eastern Pacific, we're expecting 15 to 22 named storms, 9 to 14 hurricanes, 5 to 9 major hurricanes. And in the Central Pacific, we're expecting 5 to 13 tropical cyclones. These percentages are based on multiple factors that represent a probabilistic distribution, which includes a lot of information. But even though we're expecting a below average season in the Atlantic, it's very important to understand that it only takes one. We have had Category 5s make landfall in the past during below average seasons. What's driving this forecast is largely an El Nino event. There's a 98% chance of El Nino conditions occurring later this season, and an 80% chance that this El Nino will be moderate to strong. In the Atlantic, the El Nino increases the vertical wind shear, which disrupts the outflow at higher levels. It makes it harder for development of the eastern waves coming off of Africa to strengthen into storms. However, in the Central and Eastern Pacific, the El Nino reduces the vertical wind shear, essentially the opposite of the Atlantic, which is why we're expecting above average season in addition to the warmer sea surface temperatures there. We have several new observing systems that we're bringing online this year. As you heard about earlier, we have uncrewed aircraft systems. We tested these over the last couple of years with Black Swift drones used operationally this year for the first time in the HAFS model. The tests that we ran in the experiments last year showed that the inclusion of this data from these drones increased the intensity forecast accuracy by roughly 10%. We also have uncrewed surface vehicles and submersible gliders. In addition to the observing systems, we're doing a lot of work on the modeling front. We're introducing an AI-based version of the GFS, as well as an AI global ensemble forecast system, the hybrid GEFS. We also have a new AI-based hurricane forecast model that we've developed in partnership with Google DeepMind, which we used experimentally in last year's hurricane season. There are also advances in the physics-based models. The Unified Forecast System has been testing an experimental high-resolution seasonal forecast system. We also have the Office of Water Prediction, which will be rolling out high-resolution flood inundation mapping, which couples to the hydrological forecast. This provides the emergency managers visualization of predicted inundation at the street and neighborhood level. The Hurricane Center has some new communication products as well. They're implementing a new version of the forecast cone, which was tested last year. This cone includes tropical storm and hurricane watches and warnings in inland areas. We're also issuing new products and services in support of storm surge forecasting for the Hawaiian Islands. Lastly, the Hurricane Center is testing an experimental version of even a newer cone. Since 2007, the cone has been based on absolute track error, but this new experimental cone accounts for forward motion and directional or lateral uncertainty. This is a much better way to independently visualize uncertainty in both direction and timing. For the official forecast guidance, go to hurricanes.gov. June 1st is almost here. Be ready, have a plan, listen to your state and local emergency managers. Preparation is essential. You can learn more at ready.gov. For more on storm preparedness, I'll now welcome National Weather Service Director Ken Graham.
Thank you, Dr. Jacobs. Some great information there for everybody, and some big highlighting some big improvements going forward. So it's a very exciting time. So just thank you, and thank you, Admiral Carey, as well. So just saluting this incredible team behind us. And I just wanted to definitely echo what Dr. Jacobs said, just saluting the employees of NOAA, just an amazing group. I think, I don't know, every day I seem to be more humbled to be at the helm of the Weather Service, and just looking at the whole crew here in blue and others supporting this mission. We can't do it without you, so just a big thank you. Great to be here at AOC. Just an amazing place, a lot of operations, but I definitely want to thank somebody that's here on stage. This is our lead seasonal hurricane forecaster, Matt Rosencrans. These numbers, right, they're just not just generated by random. There's a lot of science that goes in to these numbers every single year. So I want to thank Matt and your team for everything that you've done, and also congratulate Matt, because this will be his last seasonal outlook as he's going to our lab to train the next generation of Outlook scientists, which is absolutely amazing. So I'm glad to have him in the test bed training the next generation. So he's absolutely amazing, and he's here with his dad. His dad put your hand up there. So congratulate both of them here for such a great job and all these years of service. So seriously, being able to train the next generation is a huge thing. But on behalf of NOAA, the Weather Service, and quite frankly, the American people, thanks for your service. Just absolutely amazing amount of work over the years. So it's great to be here, and I really salute the aircraft operations folks. Wow. I got to fly in to Hurricane Helene, and one of these, I'm not sure which one behind me, I didn't look where they were parked, but it was an amazing experience, but just an incredible mission. Heroes, honestly. They go towards the storm so we can get people away from the storm. It's just quite simple as that. So what you all do is just amazing. We can't do it without you. So we've never been more prepared for hurricane season as we are now. Dr. Jacobs highlighted some of the new models, the new technology, the service improvements. So it's absolutely amazing. Looking at the new cone for the National Hurricane Center, just saluting everyone there, always progressing, always going forward, just being able to have the inland effects. Just the cone doesn't stop the impacts don't stop at the coast. The impacts go way inland, and we've seen that over and over and over again, including most of the fatalities end up being inland as well. So as a result, looking at a cone that highlights all those inland threats is a big step forward for the public to understand what these threats are. And Dr. Jacobs also talked about the experimental cone. I mean, you almost got to retrain yourself a little bit, because we always talked about the last 5 years of error, and 67% of the time the center stays in the cone, 1/3 out. Anyway, we've got to retrain ourselves. It's okay. So having this new cone, I think, is a big step forward to actually represent about 90% of the possibilities of where the center could be. I think is a big leap forward. So kudos to that new representation of it. I do want to announce as well, with the flood inundation mapping that Dr. Jacobs mentioned, by the end of September, we'll have 100% of the country covered. This was a long effort.
A long effort indeed. We come back into the studio here because now we get to witness some of our efforts here locally coming up to prepare for that hurricane season, and a little more insight into what's to come for us here in Hampton Roads. Evan Stewart is here. We will be with him right after a brief commercial break. All right, we're back here in our live Impact studio. We are joined by meteorologist Evan Stewart now. Evan, you're here after we got to listen to at least the beginning portion of the National Atmospheric or National Ocean Atmospheric Association.
Atmosphere, yeah.
Speaking about, right, this is, I should have left this whole thing.
Yeah, just say NOAA. Yeah.
I always go NOAA, and then I'm like, is that confusing? Because NOAA is also a person's name.
Right, yeah. And
but I like to lay it out.
It had a little bit to do with the water
right.
and stuff.
And see, I'm laying the whole title out so that I can make it more clear for everyone. And then everyone's definitely more confused after I just did whatever it is I just did. Right. But you are here to clear up any confusion that we may have. Let's start with Atlantic hurricane season. A little bit about just your observations on what's to come.
Yeah, well, obviously the National Weather Service, National Hurricane Center, NOAA, came out with their forecast, which is for a lower activity year, which is kind of right in line with what Colorado State has said, and kind of what we're seeing. The idea is that we're transitioning from a La Nina pattern to an El Nino pattern. That's the warm waters in the Pacific Ocean, and when you have that warming waters in the Pacific, you tend to see more activity in the Pacific Ocean, and that disrupts the air currents and everything in the Atlantic Ocean, and typically that means a less active year in the Atlantic, and that's sort of what all the indicators are for right now. Now, we say that it's not going to maybe be average for an average season, but that doesn't mean that one's not going to hit.
Right.
All it takes is one.
Right.
and you look at some, past seasons that were inactive, when you look at the 90s and you had Hurricane Andrew, which was a devastating, Category 5 hurricane in Florida. But other than that, it was a fairly inactive and a late start to the hurricane season. So again, just because we say it's going to be less active, yeah, it sort of lowers the odds, but it doesn't, make it zero that something won't hit.
Right.
We've had some busy years here where we didn't have hardly any, storms that interacted with the United States. So it's just overall activity in the Atlantic, Caribbean, and Gulf it's not a forecast for how is it going to impact, coastal areas.
Even the decreases numerically, it's not an overly significant number, right? It's not like it's cut in half. It's minus a couple potential tornadoes or hurricanes.
Yeah, just a little bit below average. I don't have the official numbers here in front of me. I think it was 8 to 14 it might be what they're going, and I think an average year is 13, something like that. So it is a little bit below the official or the average from the 90s until 2020 or so. So again, a little less active, but not like, oh, it's going to be quiet and nothing's going to happen.
And as we've learned generally in life and when it comes to the weather, you never get anything for free. So with this El Nino creating a situation where we might have a less active season, is there a unintended consequence somewhere down the line that could impact us?
Well, I think one of the things that we are seeing is the drought situation here across much of the southeast. And yeah, we got some rain coming up over the next few days, but we're still in a moderate to severe to even now. The new drought monitor came out to an extreme drought. So, hopefully, we will get some rain, but typically in an El Nino pattern, things are a little bit drier across the southeast.
Right. And speaking of those drought conditions, we'll let everybody know on Live Impact News. We kind of like to bring you behind the scenes is all the graphics that you typically see. And Evan really has the graphics going more than almost anybody with some of the creative things that you do. But none of those are available to us right now. There's a reboot happening company-wide. So we'll just very, very briefly, today, tomorrow, the weekend, what are we looking at?
Yeah, and just to lay it all out there, once a month, we run Windows updates and all that, update the computers, and that just happens, now that we're streaming pretty much and on air all day, there has to be a time to do it. Yeah. And so it just happens to usually be between 1 and 3 on the third Thursday of the month, and that's right during Live Impact News. Yeah. So yes, we are tracking some rain. I don't know if maybe you can pull up Max 3. I don't know if it's working right now, but Max 3, I did have the radar up earlier, and we'll see if if it's still going around, that means they haven't killed that computer out yet. If it just shows up as black video, then I know that they've rebooted it. Let's see. Is there anything there? No, Yeah, that one's on the reboot. And
luckily it's Thursday. We've had 3 days of real true forecasting this week. Any major changes, I guess, would maybe be the best way to look at it.
Yeah, so we have a cold front that's moving through, and I might be able to bring up Max 1. It looks like that one's already rebooted now. So yes, we have a cold front that is pushing into the area right now and sliding southward. We're starting to see some showers and even a few thunderstorms popping up, especially across North Carolina. Seeing a couple here popping up over the Richmond area. So those are going to continue to develop here as we go through the afternoon. So it does look like I might be able to get you something here on Max 1, Naya.
Well, what we do have while you guys are working on that is we do have behind you, as of right now, it's a fairly pretty day out in Virginia Beach for this month.
Yeah.
So far today, it's been quite nice.
It has been. Right now, 84, and we do have some graphics here up, so we've got that. We have the cold front that's moving through, and you'll be able to see the front. Big difference across the area right now with that cold front. Right now pushing into Richmond and Williamsburg, you can see it's, in the 60s along the eastern shore, and 70s in Saluda and 80s down across 90 degrees in Emporia, 89 Suffolk and Franklin, and we have started to see, again, some of those thunderstorms firing up. Most of the activity so far this afternoon has been south of the Albemarle Sound, but we're starting to see a few more around Richmond and Williamsburg. So let's go back here and can put this in motion and kind of show you what's been, there you can see some of the missing data as everything reloads. But we're starting to see some of those showers and thunderstorms popping up off towards the north with that front right now, up around Richmond and then moving into, again, up around New Kent County, King William County, and working its way southward now. So we will start to see some of these showers and thunderstorms popping up, moving into Surrey and James City County, Williamsburg. And then as we get down into North Carolina, we've got a few more showers and some thunderstorms there as well. As a matter of fact, there was a decent amount of lightning with that thunderstorm. Right now, that is, just sort of been sitting there and working its way, sort of drifting around, moving into, parts of Terrell County and Washington County. So we do have a few thunderstorms that are out there. And as we go here through this afternoon, we'll likely see a few more popping up. Not everybody's going to see that rain through the area, but there will be some of these showers and thunderstorms through the evening. Of course, I'll be on, here in, an hour and a half at 4 o'clock with 13 News Now at 4, be tracking these storms. And then Tim will take over at 5, and I'll be back at 6:30 tracking any storms that are out there. And then as we get into the extended forecast, we've got several days of rain coming up. Now, it's not going to be a washout. As you can see, more just isolated to scattered showers and thunderstorms. So that sort of plays out like this: 80 on Saturday, 84 Sunday, and 86 on Memorial Day. Again, there'll be some showers around, but no reason to cancel any plans. I know there'll be, memorial services, commemorations on Memorial Day. And so, no reason to cancel any plans.
All right, very good. That's what we like to hear. No reason to cancel any plans, despite the fact that we may get some rain. And very nicely done, improvised forecast there, Evan. And as you said, we'll see Evan in just a couple hours here. I mean, an hour and 35 minutes. He'll be on 13 News Now with plenty more coverage. Everything will be rebooted, recharged, and ready to go by then. But we appreciate you dropping in with us here on Live Impact News.
Yep, my pleasure.
All right, that is Evan Stewart, everybody. And the budget hearing regarding the Department of Transportation has begun. We're going to take a commercial break, and when we get back, we'll hear from Secretary Sean Duffy, the Secretary of Transportation, as he speaks about their requests for the 2027 budget allocations. That's coming up next on Live Impact News. Okay, so we have one live event going on right now, so we're going to aim our attention towards that. We have Secretary Sean Duffy speaking at a hearing regarding the 2027 budget. We've heard a lot about this 2027 budget proposal, multiple hearings over the course of the last few weeks, and that continues with the Department of Transportation. This is the House Appropriations Committee hearing, and we're going to go out to that live now. We will give a note as well that we expect Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer to be holding a news conference live in Washington, D.C. as well. The setup has come up on our live feeds here, but it hasn't begun. So we'll go to Sean Duffy, and if there is a sharp pivot, it's because we're headed out to Chuck Schumer. But for now, out to the House Appropriations Committee.
Results. In 2025, we successfully reduced roadway deaths by 6.7% across the nation. Mr. Clyburn, I'd be happy to talk to you more about what's happening in South Carolina, but the numbers nationally have come down, and that is a good thing. This is the 5th largest drop in roadway deaths in the history of DOT. So we're making progress. We have a long way to go. We're at 36,000 plus deaths a year, still way too many, but we're making progress. We're going in the right direction. We're working on our Freedom to Drive initiative, working on bottlenecks across the country, making sure we can alleviate traffic snares. I'm going to try to move through this quickly, but I want to talk about what we're doing collaboratively with states to finally make transit safe and clean and dependable. I'm a Republican, and I recognize that our states do not work, our cities don't work if we don't have good transit systems. But I do think we should expect from those systems that they are clean, that they're safe, that people want to ride them. You should have your 16-year-old daughter should be able to take the subway or the transit system at 7 o'clock at night on a Saturday. And if we don't hit that standard, we have work to do together to make sure the bar is high for us, to make sure that people want to ride and they can safely ride, because a lot of people can't afford to ride other forms of transportation. So I think we owe it to our fellow brothers and sisters. I would like to just mention before I turn it back to you, Mr. Chairman, I would at one point like to talk about the Merchant Marine Academy. For those of you who've been there.
All right, everybody. I know that this was quick. I know that we're moving around pretty rapidly here, but we have a new live feed that has come up where they are discussing hearings regarding Jeffrey Epstein, the House Oversight closed-door interview with an Epstein assistant, Sarah Kellen. We have a congressman who will be speaking about that hearing right now. Let's listen in.
These were new names for us, so we'll be releasing the transcript as quickly as possible. I know there are some names of some victims that she also mentioned that we're gonna have to agree on redactions and things like that. But as far as the men that were abusers, alleged abusers, then we'll the whole world will see that and we'll be able to move forward. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Can you share the names of those abusers now?
We'll get them as quickly as possible, and it's still going on, so I don't want to do that. But you'll find out very soon.
What steps might we take to look at those people?
Well, we're going to be, you'll see very soon. So this is why I've always felt like the most important people to bring in are the victims. And this is a good reason why it wasn't, there were no video cameras in there. So you can't imagine how much better quality and better disposition and everything, the deposition or the interviews going, because nobody's showing out in front of a camera or anything. We've gotten some very substantive stuff. She was a very good, sincere, helpful witness, and I can't say enough good things about her. And again, applaud her bravery. More evidence emerges every time we bring somebody in that the government failed the victims. That's the obvious. We know that. Even though she was Epstein's assistant, she was never interviewed by anyone in the Department of Justice until 2019. So what we found is Epstein's accountant, Epstein's lawyer, and Epstein's personal assistant were never interviewed by anyone prior to Epstein's case becoming public at the very end. So that's the obvious that the government failed the victim. So any other questions?
Lawmakers who believe that she was a perpetrator of abuse, do you think they're arguing today
Yeah.
she was a victim?
I believe she was a victim. Now, I would yield to other members of the committee, especially the female members, and let them give you their opinion. But she was very helpful today and very believable, very intelligent. Terrible story to get there. And she was 21 when she was first began being abused by Epstein. So.
Aside from giving you new names to look at, what other substance did Sarah Kellen have?
Well, the new names that's what we've been waiting for. All the meetings that we've had with the survivors thus far, they haven't said any names. They just say subpoena the estate, which I did, and we got all the documents from the state. Well, subpoena the DOJ, which we have in the court of the DOJ. They've turned over all the documents that they can legally turn over. Now we'll be able to verify that, hopefully with Pam Bondi next week. But the information that we received from the Department of Justice is they've turned over every document that they can turn over by law. So that hasn't led to any new name. So today was very helpful, and I hope that we can continue that, because we want to see people held accountable. We want to see men, we don't care who they are, held accountable for terrible, unlawful criminal behavior. And one thing I have to add, Garcia, he asked questions, and it's all about Mar-a-Lago and all this, and she dispelled all that. I can't tell you the difference in how I think the Republicans are behaving in this investigation. The Democrats have one goal, it appears to me, and that's to try to somehow come up with this, verify this narrative that Trump's involved in this somehow. Just not the case, and I think that this is going to be a good day for us moving forward, because we have some names, and hopefully that'll lead to more survivors given more names. And again, these are allegations, and there's going to have to be more work done. But one of the things that we hope all along, in addition to getting the truth to the American people, is holding people accountable. So we'll see how that turns out, but I'm more optimistic today than I have been in a long time. So. Well, I've already talked to Pam Bondi, because she came in for a briefing that the Democrats got up and left. So all the questions I have for Pam Bondi, I've already asked. So the Democrats made their little show. And again, you had the Attorney General, the sitting Attorney General at the time, now she's former, come in to answer questions on Epstein, and they all stormed out to run on CNN and MSNBC and complain. I mean, how is that justice for the victims? I don't know, but.
Had you seen these three names in the unredacted?
I have not. Okay. I'm not sure anyone on the staff has that. I'll have to go. I've talked to part of the staff, but these were three new names to me, and I'm following along pretty good.
And you mentioned that Ranking Member Garcia was asking about President Trump and Mar-a-Lago. How was the witness today sort of responding to or filling in what she knows about Trump and Epstein?
She just said she didn't know anything about Trump, that Epstein went over there, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, to work out some, and Trump kicked him out because he was flirting with, he hit on a member's daughter or something. So said that was it, and that she never saw Trump around or had any interactions with Trump. So, all right, thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Okay, so the conclusion of that particular press conference regarding, again, the House Oversight Committee interviewing one of Jeffrey Epstein's assistants today as that investigation continues here. He mentioned how helpful she was and really applauded her for the amount of details she was able to give. But then he also mentioned that this is just evidence that the government failed the victims of Jeffrey Epstein, that she had not been interviewed previously despite everything that has occurred around this investigation and around this incident, again stating the government failed the victims in this case, as this assistant was not previously interviewed, and he remarked repeatedly about how helpful she was. They did mention that those transcripts would be sent out shortly, and he also mentioned that the alleged abusers will be seen by the whole world. He said the alleged abusers, the whole world will see that. So we await that transcription, of course. Now, let's bring in the People's Producer, Nia Campbell here. Nia, do we want to do a break, or do we want to go back out to the budget hearing now?
Let's take a break.
Okay, let's take a break. Let's go ahead and do a quick commercial break. When we get back, we're still awaiting Chuck Schumer, and we've got Secretary Sean Duffy speaking at this moment. We'll be right back. Okay, welcome back, where we have once again pulled up the committee hearing on the transportation budget, on the 2027 budget, of which the Transportation Department is a portion. So let's listen in to Secretary Sean Duffy once again here.
And suss out the truth of the information that was submitted to make it a determination.
Well, I asked the question only because we want to make sure that non-union states, like my state of Arkansas, can remain competitive. And it's good to know that they're not going to be punished for having those types of prohibitions. Finally, as you know, I've championed funding to address the chronic shortage of safe parking for American truckers. Our 27 bill made another installment in this priority. The trucking industry, state DOTs, and local communities are watching closely to see how the department moves on these grants. This is not a single agency problem. It crosses the Federal Highways Infrastructure Portfolio and the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration's Safety and Hours of Service mission. It's not just a convenience issue. Tired drivers who cannot find a legal, safe place to stop are a safety hazard. And you don't have to drive America's interstates, particularly at sundown, to understand where these truckers are finding some relief. They're on our exit ramps and entry ramps. Can you provide us with an update on the implementation of this program, and specifically when you anticipate the release of a NOFO?
Yeah, so first, I appreciate the committee's work in making sure. I believe it was $200 million for truck parking, and you're right. You go to on-ramp or off-ramp on any freeway, at sundown, we have trucks pulled over. They're looking for places to park, sometimes spending upwards of an hour looking for a place to park, and it becomes a safety hazard and a safety risk for other drivers, but also for those commercial drivers. So I believe it's either this week or the start of next week that NOFO on the $200 million will come out. And if I do think if the money comes back for a second round of truck parking, I do think there could be an opportunity that we could work on. Is there a way we could expand the money that this body gives to have a public-private partnership where we bring in private capital to truly expand and give us more parking across the country on our freeways and interstates?
Are federal highways and the motor carriers working on a joint framework on this, how these funds are going to be deployed?
Well, OST is putting out the NOFO, and we worked with all the modes, and we'll together work through the best applications. There's a thought process on how we could do that, and how we should look at where we do it. Is it sporadic, or is it on several different routes?
We have another installment that's in our bill that we marked up this morning and will be in front of the full committee in a couple of weeks. But I want to make sure that truck parking will continue to be a priority of your administration.
And I think we're going to ask for a quick turn off the NOFO so we can make determinations and get those dollars out relatively quickly.
I thank the gentleman.
Thank you.
Mr. Clyburn.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, I've got a safety question that is a two-parter, one involving manpower, the other methods. The first one is, we've spent, $96 million to hire new air traffic controllers. And I understand that there's been a sort of a new supercharged hiring process that is being undertaken, but it's been called to my attention that the NATCA, the Air Traffic Control Union, is not involved in this process at all. Could you explain why the group representing the employed was not brought into this?
That's a great question. Thank you, Congressman, for asking it. So just if you give me, I'll try to be quick. The historic level of staffing up till 2024 was the 1.87, which is what we've gone back to right now. And it was bumped up to a higher staffing level for the last 2 years. But historically, that's the number that we've determined is a safe staffing level to operate the national airspace. But because of the disagreement between the FAA that wanted the historic number and NATCA that wanted the bigger number, You all told me to go to the Transportation Research Board and have the Transportation Research Board, independent, nonpartisan, look at this and tell us what's the right staffing levels. And they did come back and they've said that the staffing level that we've come out with, the historic staffing level, is the right level, not the heightened one from NATCA. And by the way, I do work very well with NATCA and the team, and I'm grateful for the controllers and have a wonderful relationship with them.
Well,
Okay, as we said before, we may have a quick transition. We're going to do so now. Chuck Schumer has just taken the podium in Washington, D.C. Let's listen to what he has to say.
Over Trump's brazenly corrupt slush fund for his billionaire cronies and January 6th insurrectionists. They have soiled their reputation by fighting to fund Trump's billion-dollar ballroom at taxpayer expense. And all the while, Republicans haven't lifted a finger to lower Americans' costs. Trapped in a corner by their own president, Republicans have their backs to the wall with no way out, nowhere to hide, no end in sight. The only way for Republicans to get out of this box is to stop backing the slush fund, stop pushing the ballroom, and as soon as we get back, join Democrats in fighting to lower Americans' costs on health care, on housing, on power, on child care, and on so much else, and to join us in fighting the corruption that Trump just revels in. Republicans are in retreat, but Democrats are moving full steam ahead to fight Trump's costs, chaos, corruption. Senator Durbin.
Thanks, Chuck. Is it possible on May 21st, 2026, the Republicans finally found an ethical bridge too far? I wonder, could it have been that golden ballroom for $1 billion that was supposed to be freebie that Mar-a-Lago golf buddies were going to pitch in for? Or perhaps it was this incredible slush fund. I don't know quite what to call it. It was a Capitol Police Cop Beaters Relief Fund, so that those who were convicted of assaulting the Capitol and their violent attacks will get a special premium payment by the slush fund. Maybe that was the bridge too far. I'm not sure we'll ever find out. This much we know. When the Republicans return home this weekend, as we do, they're going to find that the American people are sick and tired of this baloney. They want to get down to basics. Gasoline at $5.49 a gallon in Chicago, that's what it was when I left. Grocery prices up, utility prices up, rent prices up, and nothing from the Republicans and nothing from Trump to help these families. That's the real message of today.
Thank you. Senator Merkley.
This battle over the reconciliation bill is all about costs, chaos, and corruption. Costs, $70 billion, and not a penny going to health care, housing, education, helping people with the price of gas at the pump, nothing that American families are suffering from. $70 billion. And let's talk about chaos. Not a single common sense reform for ICE or CBP, who have been acting like secret police terrorizing communities across this country. And then corruption. Well, certainly the $1 billion for a ballroom boondoggle worthy of Louis XIV, but totally inappropriate in a democratic republic, that's certainly corruption. But this settlement, in which Trump sues his own administration and his former defense lawyer serving as acting attorney general, proceeds to say, I know what, I'll give you $1.8 billion to hand out to whomever you want. I mean, that is really a world record in self-dealing. Think about any other country in the world where you've read about corruption. Have you read about a president giving himself $1.8 billion to hand out to his friends? I mean, all of this, finally, appears to be too much for our colleagues across the aisle. We are hoping that they will join us in tackling the issues that families face across this country. Join us in tackling the misbehavior of ICE and CBP, and join us in taking on this profound level of corruption that has known no equal in our entire 2 centuries plus of history, and probably no equal anywhere in the world.
Senator Schatz.
Jeff's got a plane. People are really struggling out there. They can't afford their health care. They can't afford their utility bills. They can't afford to fill their gas tank. They can't afford their mortgage. They can't afford their rent. And you would think that if the political party in charge has basically 2 golden tickets to pass major legislation through this process, that they would prioritize making life more affordable for their constituents. But instead, they want to quadruple the size of ICE, they want to build a ballroom, and they want to provide compensation for the people that stormed this Capitol and beat up cops. And so don't let anybody tell you there's not enough money in the United States of America. What they are telling you is that there is enough money for a ballroom. There is enough money to pay off their friends and violent insurrectionists. There is enough money to quadruple the size of ICE. There's enough money to start multiple regime change wars. What they are telling you is that there's not enough money for you.
Senator Blunt, Rochester.
Thank you, Chuck. You know, today in this very present moment, this is actually a victory for the American people. When we go home to our states, we are hearing from people up and down in Delaware, up and down the state. I had a family reach out to us and say that we are no longer able to pay our bills. We're using a line of credit on our mortgage to pay our bills. We're not eating. This woman was 60 years old who wrote to us, and she said, she ended it by saying, I'm a Republican. Everybody is hurting across this country, and what this administration is doing is showing us what their priorities are. Their priorities are a gold-plated ballroom. Their priorities are a new reflecting pool, which we hope is not painted with the face of Donald Trump at the bottom. They're showing us that their priorities are building detention centers. In the 250th anniversary of this country, this is not the direction that we should be going. People are hurting, and this administration is acting as if the American people are their ATM. And so we stand here today to say, we're glad that this happened today, that it was stopped, it was stalled, but we know this is not the end. This is the same group that last year brought you one big, beautiful bill that gave money to ICE and CBP, but cut your health care. And so we're going to continue to fight. We're going to continue to stand up for the American people. And as my colleague said, we hope that this is a new day for Republicans in Congress, that we take our power back, because our power stems from the people. So I just want to thank Chuck for giving us this opportunity, but just tell the American people to stay tuned. We know this is not the end of the battle.
Questions? Yes.
You mentioned you hope Republicans stop backing the slush fund. Is it anybody's understanding that any of your colleagues, any Republicans, are actually backing that thing?
The whole fight that they've had today is about bowing down to Donald Trump and doing what the American people don't want them to do, whether it's the ballroom or the slush fund, or siding with the American people. And the bottom line is that too many of them are siding with Trump. They're either afraid of Trump, look what happened this week, or they are blind, so blind that they don't see that it's costs, costs, costs that's making the American people angry and frustrated. And frankly, we're angry and frustrated that Republicans don't join us. We want to help people feed themselves. We want to help people be able to go to work and pay for that tank of gas. We want to help first-time home buyers afford a mortgage. And they're busy fighting amongst themselves on something the American people don't care about.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. When you all return, the FISA deadline will be, I think, June 12th. Are you concerned that because they didn't handle this before Memorial Day, that this will impact a must-pass piece of legislation like FISA?
Look, the FISA needs reform. I think almost all of our caucus feels it needs reform, and we're willing to work with the Republicans to get that reform. I don't think they know where they're at.
But because they did.
Yes.
Senator Schumer, sort of up until now, the main Democratic electoral message has been affordability, the cost of living, prices. Are you guys now going to talk a lot more about corruption going into the fall?
Look.
Because you've got now this fund.
Here's the link. Corruption often leads to the high prices. Donald Trump sided with the big oil and gas industries and cut off the cheapest way to get power on the grid. Donald Trump, listening to a few big industry people, put in the tariffs that raised the costs. The two are tied together. Our goal is to get the costs lower, but the corruption in this administration pushes them to do the opposite.
Okay, the press conference featuring Democratic leaders carries on, but unfortunately our time here on Live Impact News has come to an end. A very busy day. We appreciate everyone bearing with us, joining our show, having patience as we bring you all of those major updates. That breaking news, all 8 counts against Dr. Ebony Parker dismissed this morning by a judge. More coverage of that coming up on 13 News Now at 4. For now, for Nia Campbell, I'm Connor Real. Thanks for watching Live Impact News.